And we're very honoured to have with us today Kay Hall from the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. And hi, Kay. How are you doing? And Michelle Cunningham from, I paused there in case I got the name wrong, because everybody's got their names in front of themselves apart from you, Michelle. Is
I just realized that my name says Kay Hall.
Yeah.
We know.
So there, okay, from Barbados Community College. Myself, I'm from Alan from University of St Andrews, and we have Ian also here from the University of St Andrews, and Catherine Cassidy, our maestro with digital technologies and 3D digitization. And the last time we were all together was in Barbados, and I can tell you the climate in Barbados is significantly better than the climate in Scotland in general, and I'm guessing that that's true today. It's a bit of a dreary, windy day here, and today is Windrush Day. 72 years ago today, the Empire Windrush arrived in Tilbury Books in Tilbury Docks in London, having completed its journey from Jamaica. So we're really pleased to be able to talk about the Virtual Museum of Caribbean Migration and Memory, which is a bit of a mouthful. It shortens to VMCC. Virtual Museum of Caribbean. Anyway, it's shortened. It's shortened.
It's actually harder with the letters.
Yeah, and with a particular focus on the Enigma of Arrival exhibition, which I recently discussed. Although I was familiar with the exhibition, is also the name of a well-renowned book, which I can recommend for people to read. And we also welcome here as well now Mary Morrison from North Uist to give another island perspective on the questions to do with migration. But I think that I need to mention that that whilst we're here doing a CUPIDO show, the work that we're talking about was part and parcel, and still is ongoing work, part and parcel of the EU LAC Museums and Communities project, in which the University of St Andrews and Barbados Museum and a lot of other people collaborated together to produce digital representations of heritage and to enhance community engagement inside of museums. And that's an ongoing project, which there are webinars, an ongoing series of webinars that you might want to look up. So that's EU LAC Museums and Communities. If you just do a search on Facebook, you will find some excellent seminars that are coming up on that, run by them. Okay, so I suppose that the next best thing to happen would be maybe if our participants would like to say a couple of words, because I've kind of done introductions, but maybe you want to represent yourself in your own words. I think, could we start with Kay?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kay Hall. I am the Education and Community Outreach Officer at the Barbados Museum and Historical Society in Barbados, obviously. My job is really to push the museum to focus people's attention on the museum as an education institution, and to work with them to really let the museum be a resource in terms of propagating our history, our heritage, our culture. The Enigma of Arrival exhibition was a big part of that in this last year or two, because it's a part of our history that's definitely not being documented from the Caribbean side. Everybody's got a relative that was somehow a part of this migration, but we didn't have those stories documented. We didn't have that experience as a part of the history that we teach in the Caribbean. So a great part of that project has been getting that history documented, of course, with help from EU LAC Museums and St. Andrews. We're very grateful for their assistance and of course their funding. And the outcome of that has been this absolutely wonderful traveling exhibition, which everybody's laughing, which has done
it was just Kay, I didn't realize that we had funded you. It was obviously somebody else, it wasn't me.
Right. But basically, without your help, the exhibition would not have been possible. We've been able to bring hundreds of people into contact with that very large part of our history and heritage. Lots of people have been able to tell their stories in real time because a lot of those people who experienced that history are still alive. So it's been a wonderful and enriching experience.
I'm sure that you would have done something really fabulous without us, and we're all very pleased to have been for the small part that we've been able to play in the Enigma exhibition. And it's been around a bit, hasn't it? You've done some stuff you've done the exhibition in Barbados, but also in Jamaica, and I understand there's a big launch taking place today in Reading.
Yes, it should have started already actually, because it's supposed to be 10 a.m. your time that it should have gone live at Reading Museum site. readingmuseum.org, I believe, .org.uk is the address. So they've got a landing page. It takes you on to a lot of the exhibition content, some wonderful learning resources. They're also going to be live on Goldust Radio today from I think 4 o'clock UK time. They did a wonderful session yesterday from midday where they shared some oral histories of either people who were part of that Windrush migration or who are first generation descendants of that Windrush migration, which, by the way, I'm going to see if we can't perhaps get those oral histories to be a part of the virtual Museum of Migration. I don't think they should die there with their exhibit. I think they should be preserved somewhere for posterity. So I'm very glad I listened in to see what they were doing. But yes, that launches today and it's going to be up until October for sure. And I gather that once lockdown is finished, people will be able to go and physically see the exhibition as well.
And I noticed that part of the exhibition they have some fantastic Caribbean recipes. So we're going to have a Caribbean dinner this evening using those recipes. Not least of which I see that there was at least 2 rum punch recipes. So I think that they definitely have to be explored. It would be, it would be culturally inappropriate today not to explore Caribbean rum punch recipes. The food looks great too. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself to the...
Sure, thanks, Alan. I'm Michelle Cox. I suppose my formal post is that I am the coordinator of the Theatre Arts degree at the Barbados Community College. A little bit more informally, I'm a playwright here in Barbados, and I specialize in museum and heritage-based theatre. A very strong component of my work as a playwright has to do with oral histories. So participating in this project for me was really quite fantastic because, as Kay said, I have quite a bit of family that would have moved across to the UK. They're still chiding my dad for not having moved with them, So it was really fantastic to be able to kind of get the collective histories from not just my family, but the students who were involved in the project as well. So a lot of our work tends to be based on oral history, whether directly from the source or, as Kay is trying to see if she can get the oral histories documented. So we work a lot with oral history, and we think it's important for us to represent that as a part of our intangible cultural heritage, because really and truthfully, a lot of our heritage and our historical stories and these things are passed down orally. A lot of them are not written. And so I think my philosophy and my job as a playwright really is about archiving those stories and having them in a tangible form as well as the intangible performance form. So that's briefly about me.
That's great. And I mean, I have to say that we visited for a conference. It was maybe 2 years ago now, and
Yeah.
the play that you did on I think it was simply entitled Windrush. You know, with all due respect to everybody else who was involved in that conference, that really to me was the highlight of it, and it was so great to see so many young enthusiastic people really engaging with the topic. We'll have a look a little bit later on some of the
And you know, I think the approach that we tend to take, especially when we're working with the museum, is an interactive approach. We try to narrow that gap between the audience and the performance, so you feel like you're a part of it. I think the performance that you would have seen, it kind of pitched the audience as though you were there at the protest with the protesters. Unfortunately, that's not captured in the video, but it's this whole idea of using immersive and interactive theater to really give the audience an intimate understanding of the content of the performance. You know, I have to, again, kind of just big up my alma mater, Goldsmiths College. That's where the work started for me, with my work with them and the internship that I would have done through them with the London National Trust. So, you know, again, this is really an extension of the work that I would have been doing through my degree program at Goldsmiths.
Okay. And I'm actually really pleased that Mary Morrison is here from North Uist, because I have a kind of a notion that Michelle and Mary, you might hit it off together.
Hope so. I was drinking it all in, Michelle, because my background has much been in English schools, but working in Bradford, which is a very, very multi-ethnic city, wonderful place. And we worked a lot in trying to make the curriculum in the schools much more multi-ethnic, and trying to teach possibly quite ethnocentric teachers. I don't mean this in a patronizing way, but trying to get over to them how important it was to respect other cultures, and that learning could begin through storytelling and drama. I was a drama specialist too. So a lot of my work was done across schools in Bradford, eventually, working on projects such as the Storybrooks project, and recognizing how important it was to include parents, their stories retold within schools. And in one wonderful school, Bellevue Girls' School, we had a whole week of story and drama across the curriculum in every lesson, science and everywhere. So I suppose my background is very much in anti-racist practice here, and just to sum it all up, probably to say that my father was one of 7 from this island, most of whom had to migrate in order to go to university to make a living. And we have a history also of being colonized with the Highland clearances and the attempts to suppress our language, our dress, our music, and everything like that after the Battle of Culloden. So I think although we're white, I don't mean to take away from the Black Lives Matter, very important social agenda at the moment. I think that there is experience of houses being burned, old people being left to die on the islands, which is still within living memory. or the stories of that ancestors told are within living memory. So we collect things, and as Alan knows, we do loads of work to reenact and research the past, but reenact it through more active means with the wonderful children up here, and use our Gaelic language as well.
Thank you, Mary, for that. And I mean, on the kind of subject of contributions, are you aware what the biggest festival is in the UK? The biggest kind of like musical entertainment event? Well, it's the Notting Hill Carnival. It's bigger than Glastonbury or anything else by some.
Yeah.
Often over 2 million people often attend it, you know, and I think that speaks volumes. I mean, without going further into, you know, people like Darcus Howe and publishers and cricketers and a whole range of contributions. But I think it's no doubt that we have a huge debt in this country to the Windrush generation, leaving aside the some of the darker issues that and I'm not sure if we should leave them aside, but leaving them aside for now, some of the darker issues that Mary referred to in terms of colonial history and the like. I think that we have a huge debt, you know, even from the 1940s onwards, in terms of British society, in terms of the contribution, the Caribbean contribution that has come to it. I mean, the Caribbean is certainly known for colour and sunshine, and I think that you guys who came over here brought some of that with us, and it's made all of our lives that little bit brighter. So that's why we're really pleased to be talking about the Windrush today. So yeah, that wasn't really a question, was it? So what do we want to, Catherine, do you want to say a little bit about yourself, seeing as we're going around?
I certainly can. That I'm Catherine Cassidy. I think if anybody has been following the XpoNorth webinars, they know me. But I am with the University of St. Andrews and PhD student, but I specialize in computer science, but I've worked with the EU LAC Museums and Communities project since the very beginning. And I specialize in digitizing and experimenting with the platforms for digitized cultural heritage. So mostly in the shape of 3D objects, but then also what those can, not just the physical are and then the digital of objects, but then also what that can generate. And it can generate a lot of intergenerational discussion, bringing back memories and stories, being able to see objects in a new way, being able to see new objects for the first time, maybe in a long time, being able to share those objects anywhere in the world at a drop, a single second, and it can be in many places at once. So it can be, objects that maybe are living in some other museum can still be part of let's say a traveling exhibition, or still be a part of a collection's, maybe their origin collection or somewhere else that it connects to, and then can be brought together on platforms such as the Virtual Museum of Caribbean Migration and Memories. I stumble over it too. So it's I look at that, but I've been lucky enough to be a part of this project as well, and seeing what it can really do, and what these kind of like a digital platform, but then also objects and stories can really do and connect and generate discussion as well.
So I'm trying to share my screen without a tremendous amount of success, because I was hoping to show you guys have a little bit of a chat about the virtual museum itself, and maybe through demonstrating it, but the share.
If you,
Oh, we've got
there
it.
you go.
Got it. I just needed to ask. I think that's all it was to it. Okay, so the virtual museum. So this is very much based upon the Arrival of Enigma exhibit that we. Okay, can you see this now? And I need to make it full screen. That was put together by the Barbados Museum and Historical Society for, initially for Museum Association of the Caribbean was when we had a kind of preliminary exhibit, and then it ran properly for quite a long time. How long did it run for? Okay, in the museum.
I think January, February this year.
So that was January, February this year. And at the heart of the exhibit are a set of panels which look at these issues. The Caribbean conditions pre-migration is the first set of panels, and they're quite big. So we can scroll down. So the politics and poetics of Caribbean migration to Britain, and this is V.S. Nepal. It's based upon his book. And could you tell us a bit about the book, Kay? Or,
well, basically the book is Nepal's exploration of his own experience as a migrant in Britain. So that sort of, I guess, emotional angst and feeling that goes along with experiences of not feeling that you belong, but not really feeling that you belong anywhere else. And that's that journey tourist trying to be recognized. And he discusses a lot of those issues that are very familiar to other migrants who would have been through a part of that Windrush migration as well. It's
that's
kind
right.
of a philosophical treatise almost on that migrant experience.
Yeah, and I love the way the exhibition kind of takes that idea, but then runs with it with a lot of different related stories. So I'm just wondering sometimes, you know, whether the quality of the picture you're getting is reasonable, because it looks great
Yes.
to me, but it is.
Yeah.
So migration before Windrush. There was a lot of migration took place after the Second World War, didn't it? There was I think there was a real shortage over here of people prepared for work. There was a lot of rebuilding that needed to be done, and also I think there was a feeling as though a lot of debt that we had with respect to the contribution made from the Caribbean during the Second World War.
Yes, and it was a bad time for the folks in the colonies as well. It was an economic decline here, but whereas in Britain there was economic opportunity in terms of being able to find jobs and contribute to the economy, opportunities were a lot less available in the Caribbean. If you weren't specially skilled or needed for agriculture, there wasn't really a lot to do for you, especially if you'd attained a certain level of education. So a lot of people took the opportunity to go and help rebuild Britain. There was an active recruitment program in the Caribbean. People came here, they signed people up, they had to take tests, they had to prove they were healthy, they had to prove that they would have somewhere to stay, that they were going with particular skills that were already needed. But in a way, that's what resulted in the scandal years later, because first you were invited and then 70 years later you were deported, which has got to feel pretty terrible.
Yes, and I think it's something that it really is quite hidden. You know, you have to dig around in British history to get this idea that you know, the United Kingdom and the government was really keen to work hard to get people to move here from the Caribbean to do the work that needed to be done. And I think it's a really important context for all of the discussion on immigration and migration that takes place since then. yeah, I guess also you'd have had to have pretty strong reasons to want to be leaving as well. Such a lovely place to live.
Well, don't
but then,
forget,
sorry.
I was going to say, don't forget that at the time of the start of this migration, to all intents and purposes, people in the Caribbean were British citizens. They were a part of that big colonial enterprise. Most countries didn't attain independence from Britain until the 1960s. So in 1948, most of the people who traveled to the UK would have traveled on what we would have called British colonial passports, and they would have, to all intents and purposes, been British citizens. Children didn't even need passports. They just basically came along with their parents as, I don't want to say part of the baggage, but pretty much that's how it was. So that's why, as a matter of fact, quite a number of the first generation people don't really have any papers to speak of, because they would have traveled on the passport of an adult who may even be deceased, who's no longer around. So it's difficult to trace how they originally ended up in Britain. So they can show you that they went to school from X date, they graduated, they've paid their taxes, but the record of how they arrived in England, if that original passport belonging to someone else, and it was a British colonial passport belonging to someone else, cannot be found, they really have no proof of how they came to be in Britain.
I know, it's terrible, really. And I mean, there are extreme examples of the Home Office, you know, losing people's passports and then saying, oh, well, you can't prove that you know, that you had a passport or the proper papers. But also this point that you make, I think, is really powerful, about people coming over not needing passports, you know, because they were kids, and then being asked to prove that they had a passport, you know, when they never did. And how do you prove it if you just lived here, you know, all of that time? And I suppose particularly if you've, you know, not had to call upon social security, but just worked hard all of your life, then they may be people who are in the worst position to be able to make those sort of proofs. So a lot of people came. Yeah.
If I didn't know if I was muted or not, just to say that the National Theatre is screening the Levy Small Island up. They're screening free on YouTube the play.
Until Wednesday.
Yes.
Sorry,
there are a couple more nights. It's on until Wednesday, and it's a wonderful performance, really, really well done. Absolutely true to things I remember happening as such an old woman in my youth. And so I would fully recommend anyone to have a go at that. A terrific experience.
Okay, that's great. And I think what we can do is we can pop that in the comments on the Facebook feed so that people can just kind of click through to it. So that's
yes,
it's
the National Theatre, National Theatre at Home.
National Theatre at Home. Okay, well we will look that up. And thank you very much. I will do that with my rum punch that I'm going to be enjoying this evening. But I think that the experience of Arrival must have been quite an eye-opener for people coming from the Caribbean. I suspect that there was probably quite a strong disconnect between the image of what people were expecting and what they actually got.
A lot of the oral histories document that when you're home, they got letters from their relatives saying how everything was absolutely wonderful in Britain. You know, you're sort of a milk and honey representation. And then lots of stories about how when they arrived, it was cold, it was damp, it wasn't all beautiful green fields and stuff. It was a dirty city. The ones who came early, it would have been post-war, bombed out parts of the city. And also, there was also difficulties with finding places to stay. Lots of people they wanted Black people in Britain to help rebuild Britain, but they didn't necessarily want to have them living amongst them. So it's very difficult to find places to live. That's sort of how you ended up with a lot of West Indian neighborhoods in the end, because they had to sort of go and stay with one another. And then those neighborhoods gradually expanded because they couldn't find any place to stay in other neighborhoods. They weren't welcome. A lot of these experiences are documented not just in the oral histories, but also in the literature of the period. Lots of people, when you see the lonely Londoners, that speaks about that not being able to find a place. When you see To Serve With Love, you basically understand how difficult it was to get a job as an educated person with something to offer. It's one of the reasons actually why we link the literature back to the exhibition, and you see those quotes running through, because this is one of those areas really where the literature, the drama, the cultural expression of the period really, really mirrors that experience, that lived experience that those people were having. We have a prominent calypsonian at the time who wrote a calypso on his way to England on the Empire Windrush. As a matter of fact, London is the place to me. You can hear a performance of it, I believe, at Reading Museum site. One of their local persons has sort of done a new rendition of it. But basically all about those expectations when you get to Britain, or how wonderful it's going to be, because they really did leave the West Indies with lots of high hopes, lots of dreams, lots of things that they wanted to accomplish. They really wanted to make a contribution to what they saw as their homeland, their mother country, because that's what they'd been raised to believe.
Yes, and I've heard that track, and it is I think it is well worth listening to, because it's certainly a track of its time, isn't it? With the sort of the description of the expectations of London. Okay, and then just going on, so that's Arrival, and we've got then Settling In is the next kind of big phase, accommodation and employment, which you've touched on there. It was, yes, you know, it's kind of shameful, really, for us, some of the reception rooms to let, no coloured men, and of course, Britain had a history of racism with regard to Ireland as well. But I think that, I mean, I hope that that's something that as we kind of got to know each other more, but maybe the racism subsided a bit.
Well, it kind of depends on who you talk to. Some people's experiences are less than others. Even the people, though, who did not directly experience racism tended to speak about it in terms of what their colleagues would have experienced. It's sort of an ongoing undercurrent story, even when they're talking about other experiences throughout. I would say the Windrush scandal of 2 years ago was sort of the culmination of that. What was sort of going along underground sort of just exploded and came to the fore, so to speak. I think, though, that discussion, that scandal in a way, and even sort of paved the way for things like this exhibition, and perhaps the discussion that needs to happen around the recognition of the contribution that these people made, and really where their place is in British society as subjects of Britain, with equitable rights, you know, along with the rest of the population. So yeah. We'll see what tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sort of minimize the existence of racism. You know, I mean, if racism kind of disappeared, then why would we need Black Lives Matter and so on? But
I think, Alan, what I think it is it's twofold. I think there needs to be much more education in schools. I'm trying very hard not to be too political here. I think that that's where it begins with re-education. But I think the really tricky thing, as I see it, is to get some people to recognize their unconscious socialization into attitudes and ways of behaving that they're unaware of, and to accept that actually they have played a part in creating these attitudes and perceptions, and they need to, not just in school, but as adults, work on it for themselves. That's probably the trickiest area to be tackled nationally. I'm trying very hard not to be too political here, but I think it's also a political issue, quite a major one at the moment. I don't want to. Yeah.
It's nice to see you quoted Linton Kwesi Johnson here, talking about Maggie Thatcher, but I mean, Linton was somebody who I kind of grew up listening to, and he was part of the sort of you know, the culture at the time. There was a lot of punk, and there was a lot of reggae, and there was a lot of ska, and there was poets, and there was we took this sort of idea of carnival as well, and there was a Rock Against Racism carnival, and there was the you know, Enoch is Right speeches and the National Front and so on in the 70s. But also there was a reaction, you know, against that. And people like Marcus Howe, I think were you know, very, very important in terms of being part of a movement that brought people together, you know, from the Caribbean, from people from Caribbean backgrounds, people from Asian backgrounds, and people, you know, from, I don't know, would we call it white? I really hate the term white working class, but people, you know, white people, black and white people uniting together. There's quite a lot of that went on in the 70s and 80s, I think. Were you aware of that? How did that reverberate in the Caribbean?
I think there was awareness in the Caribbean, especially when the nationalist movement started, and there was the idea that these people needed to be repatriated immediately and at all costs. There were a number of occasions where, for example, prime ministers or governments, colonial governments, spoke out against it. They would have sent letters to the colonial office. We've seen those for ourselves. The West Indies Federal Archives is one of the places we did research. So we saw a lot of correspondence going back and forth between the local government in the Caribbean and the British government, where there was definitely protest about that. There was definitely awareness. There was also awareness that it would have a significant negative economic impact in the Caribbean if all these people were suddenly repatriated, who would obviously, you'd have to find somewhere to put them to live. They would have to find jobs. They would have to find places to live. But also they were a source of money, funds being repatriated from Britain for all the time they had been overseas. So there was that consideration as well. With regard to the movement of the culture and the carnival and so on coming together in Britain now, Nottingham Carnival has its roots in all of these races trying to come together as a result of nationalist riots to find a sort of a place where they could meet culturally and peacefully and to find things that they had in common. So it didn't necessarily start out as a completely black carnival. If I remember correctly, one of the persons who founded it along with the people from the Caribbean was actually Polish. Her name doesn't come back to me immediately right now. It's in the text of the exhibition for people who want to come back and go through. But basically, those early roots of the carnival, where it would have been held indoors or just a short parade through the streets long before the years of the costumes. It was an attempt to get the Black working class neighborhoods and the white working class neighborhoods to come together and see what they had in common and see if they could socialize and see if they could find areas where they could grow and interact and sort of decrease the racial tensions within the neighborhoods.
Yeah. So I find, I mean, I suppose we're kind of getting up to the current day, but one of the things that I find quite disturbing is the way in which some of our leaders, they kind of using some of the terminology that was used by the far right in you know, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. I mean, the term, you know, the Trump uses in terms of, you know, make America great again, make Britain great again. You know, there was sort of terminology that was used in the past, and also Boris Johnson talking about we need our country back. Well, let's get our country back. That's exactly the slogan that the National Front marched under in the 1970s, and I find it difficult to believe that they're not really aware of that sort of history.
Like Murray says, part of it is educating people from in school days. I mean, if you grow up and there's no education around the role that these people have played and how they came to be in Britain, so you're just growing up and you're hearing nationalist talk at home, but there's nothing at school to balance that, to explore that history, to really show you what the contribution is. You're really only getting one side of the story. That's why exhibitions like Enigma are so important, because they're filling part of that education role, which is not necessarily being done in the schools. But Marie is very, very correct when she says that if you start that education, you start it from early, they learn that, you know, these people are not their enemies. These people are not taking their country from them. These people are a part of the country, that we're all, you know, building England together, so to speak. And that changes the attitudes, but it needs to start from in school. It needs to be included as a part of the curriculum. It needs to be included in what's being taught, so that what they get is not just passing down of nationalist sentiments with nothing to counteract that.
I think that is so right. And I think that, I mean, I can't remember, I was having a conversation just the other day about the same thing. And you know, it used to be that we were taught about empire in a very sort of positive way, in the sense that, you know, the British Empire did all of these wonderful things. And I think that kind of became untenable, but instead of then teaching a sort of true history of what empire involved, it just doesn't get taught. You know, it's just not part of the discourse in schools. You know, we get taught about what happened in, you know, 1939 and then what happened with the Romans, but, you know, not much else. Well, that's not true. There is a lot else that gets taught. I don't want to disparage history teachers, but I think that there are crucial bits of history that provide the important context that just aren't part of people's lives.
Well, I think, could I say something there? It's about the National Education Act in 1988. I was part of quite a few movements in the 70s and 80s where we were introducing Black history into schools. And part of the centralizing notions where the Secretary of Education had statutory rights meant a much greater control over the curriculum. And certainly since Michael Gove has been Education Secretary, there's been a huge shifting of the history curriculum towards the celebration of old, outmoded white supremacist war hero kind of ideology, with the result that a lot of the more expansive things we did within coursework, which again, people were able to do following their own cultural backgrounds. Now it's all exam-based. Those opportunities have vanished, and that's very sad.
It is. Sorry, I was just switching because I was wanting to so one of the things about this exhibit, because we talked about exhibition. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So one of the things about this the exhibition and exhibit is that there's possibility to upload stories to it, and all you need to do is to go to this address eu-lac.org/VM-Carib, and then there is a menu item, upload story, and you just click on that, and then all you need to do is just type in a little bit of text and upload a picture or a video, or just leave the text and then upload it, and then that will appear on this interactive map that we've made. So I think you can see that. So this is map. You can see the map, can you?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And so here you see there's like pins for where you've come from and where you've ended up, and we've got two-way traffic going on here, and you can just click on one of these and then hear the story. So I think that this story is
the story begins with a black trade unionist and oral historian,
Eric Lynch.
He spent a lifetime searching for his family ties. That search began in Liverpool, where Eric Lynch was born April 5th, 1932.
My mother was a black woman, and she was born in a little village outside of Newcastle, England. And the name of the village was Shotley Bridge. Her father, my grandfather, arrived in Britain as a boy around about 11 or 12 years of age on a ship of sail. He ran away from the ship. He joined a fairground. Eventually he became a boxer and finished up owning the whole of the fairground. He was the first black man to be registered with the British Board of Boxing Control. His name was Felix Augustus Scott.
So yeah, and so we're hoping to fill this out with lots more, with lots more stories. But there's also one of the nice things here is that you can go down here and for this map chooser and have a look at different maps. So if we just click on that, so there is, for example, a map of Caribbean carnivals. So if you want to see how many Caribbean carnivals there are in the world, you can just click on that, and we'll just have a look. So there, oh, I've zoomed out too far. I'm sorry about that.
Caribbean people do like to party.
The map is a little bit, what do you call it? A little bit flaky when it's in Zoom. It performs a bit better. Come on, behave yourself. But, oh, there we go. So, Falkland Islands. So not many Caribbean carnivals in the Falkland Islands, I'm afraid. But if we just there we go. So we see a good scattering across Europe and North America. And the good thing about this is you can choose one, and you can click on it, and up comes some information, and that will then link to Wikipedia, Facebook, and all the different information about that carnival. So, you know, once the COVID era ends, this map could be your sort of guided tour to carnivals around the world. You could use that, and so there's other things that we're adding in at the moment. But when we started this off, we started by talking about the Windrush play, and I would like to try and play it now, but I was just wondering, Michelle, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro to it? Oh, that's not the one.
Sure. So essentially the production was supposed to be, I suppose, the educational entertainment factor at that. It was it the exhibition launch, Kay?
Mm-hmm.
The very first time it was screened would have been at the launch of the International Museums Conference in November 2018. Itinerant Identities, Community Museums, Museum Communities. So that would have been the first time. And then we've had it a few times since then. It's a kind of a popular request item, really. And the film, of course, is used over and over again.
Yeah, so what we did essentially is that a lot of the information from the panels, Kay would have sent that to us as resource material. Just a minute, Dante. He sent it to us, she would have sent it to us as resource material. And one of the things that we did, as I said earlier, is that we had the students speak to their own families. You see the photos of the students there, the very short one, Dylan, he is actually a British citizen. He's in England right now. He was only in Barbados for the 2 years studying. And his parents would have gone across to the UK. Well, his grandparents would have gone across to the UK in the Windrush era. So he's living it right now. You know, when he came across, there were certainly those challenges happening. You know, he had stories himself of experiences of racism in the UK. Dante, he had, sorry, my son is getting ready for his online classes.
That's cool. I'm sorry, we kept you for too long.
No, that's fine. He can sort himself out. So we had them pretty much talk to their family. There were about 2 or 3 others whose grandparents also would have been in the UK with that Windrush period. And I certainly have a lot of my family as well. So we started our process by reading through the research, you know, looking at the quotes from texts like Small Island, of course, Linton Kwesi Johnson, and really kind of helping them to unpick the reality of the situation at that time. One of the things that we found was with the riots that would have been happening, the protests at the time of the Windrush scandal, one of the things that we found was that there were a number of Windrush descendants, Black people in England who did not understand, who did not appreciate, who did not support what was happening. And so we decided to take it from that perspective, you know, because there's some of them who were well documented, and so they had no challenges. They were not at risk of being deported. Whereas, you know, there are others, as Kay would have explained, who had no kind of documentation to say how they even arrived in the UK. So what we did was that we took those stories and we developed these small scenes and kind of tied the scenes together with the idea of this protest that would have been happening at the time. So I'm not going to say anymore. I think I might give away too much, except that to say what St. Andrews University would have filmed would have been the day after the actual performance. So you're not going to get to see the interactivity that would have happened with the audience who was present at the event itself, but certainly you will get a sense of what the performance was trying to achieve through these young people's voices. So I'll stop there for now.
I think it's really difficult actually I mean, now that you've said that, it must be really difficult for them to, you know, perform without there being an audience. And I think
Nah, they're good, you know, because when we rehearse, we always rehearse and we tell them, your rehearsal is as though there's an audience there. So from the performance side of it, we train them to perform in the same way, whether or not there's an audience. So I think they were actually quite comfortable doing it for the recording as well.
Okay, that's great. Well, I think I'm going to play this now. So that will be about, it's about 12 minutes in long. I think it's worth just playing it without interruption, if that's okay. If the quality is poor, we'll include a pointer to an online version. You can see it on Facebook and also on the in the virtual museum, and maybe there are other places where it is as well, in which case we could add pointers to that. So
we live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights?
Members of the Windrush generation have called for the end of the hostile environment, deportation policy at the rally outside Downing Street. We are just going to get a few comments from the protesters here. Oh, here comes one now. Are you here for the protest?
Protest? I'm not even quite sure that I know what this is all about.
It's for the Windrush situation. Do you have any opinions on this?
Here's my thing. I'm a black woman, and my parents are from the Caribbean. But you don't see me standing up protesting about something that has absolutely nothing to do with me. I actually find this all quite a bit silly.
Silly? Are you really going to call it silly? How can you be so ignorant? I came here when I was 13 years old from Jamaica. I don't even remember Jamaica. I finished school here. I got my first job here. And I work here up to this day. 2 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And you know what they told me? That I have to pay £64,000 to get the treatment that I need. How is that fair? How do you get the treatment free that I have to pay for? And I don't know about you, but I don't have £64,000 sitting in my pocket. So don't you dare come here and tell me that what I am protesting for is silly.
Thank you, sir. Have your opinions on this matter changed?
I understand what he's saying, really I do, but I also believe that if he wanted the rights that citizens get, he should have just simply gotten the proper documentation. Are you serious, love? Are you really serious right now? Get the right documentation. I had to watch my own son struggle for 10 years to get the right documentation to be considered a citizen in his own home. He changed, lady. He wasn't the same anymore. First he stopped coming over on a Saturdays. Then he stopped answering my calls. They were pestering him, threatening to throw him out the country. And I'm sure that that contributed to his death. You know, I had to bury my son, the little savings I had. So when you say something so ignorant like that, think about me. Think about all of us, because I am black.
We are black.
We have no papers, so they're sending us back.
We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives, so how can you tell us we have no rights?
Let's put this all into context. What started all this? Let's go back to World War II.
I remember the Englishmen coming to the village saying, "Come, fight for your motherland." Now you see, most of the boys in the village thought it was a privilege to fight for England. Me, I read those statements made by that devil Hitler saying that black people and Jews are less than human. I'm gonna go to that war and shoot all the tails off if they think of us like that. And then come back home.
When we first arrived in the Caribbean, in England, there was no discrimination against us. We were all here for the same purpose. We talked together, we played together, we trained together, and most importantly,
We fought together.
By the right, quick march. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Attention! At ease.
Message from the Crown. War has now been declared over, which means that the services of some of you will no longer be needed. So, as you are dismissed, you pack your belongings and you leave. Is that understood?
Sir, yes, sir.
Is that understood, boy?
Sir, yes, sir.
Good. As you are.
Attention! Company, dismiss!
These same people that we talked with, laughed with, trained with, fought with, drank with, turned around and treated us as if the bonds we made and the memories and stories that we shared were just figments of our imaginations. Like, we weren't men fighting for the same cause anymore. Like, we were dirt, scum. We were nothing but blacks to them now, colored, less than human.
I remember going to school and having my teacher pin up this map on the board. She said, "This is England." She said it was authority and admiration. This country created what we thought was more than and what we thought was less than. And guess what? Everything about us headed that last list.
Sometimes I look back on all the times that I spent in England, and it's surprised that all of these years gone by. Looking back at general life in England, how life really hard for the men back there. And if it wasn't that we used to sit down and talk about back home, we would all suffer like hell.
A job, a mean place to sleep, food to eat, a cigarette to smoke. And even though the welfare stays in the background, when a man out to work, he like a fish out of water gasping for air. It's have some men, when they lose their job, they act as if the world ending. And when 2-3 weeks go by and they're still out of work, they get so desperate, they will do anything.
It would do you people well to learn to speak English as a king does, not in that rough and country way you people do. She doesn't understand us. She doesn't talk like us. She's not civilized like us. She only talking drum. She only talking. London is the place for me. She only talking. London is the place for me. She only talking. London is the place for me.
There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe.
There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe. There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe. There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe. There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe. There wasn't no woman who lived in a shoe.
Imagine growing up where you can't go to school because your mother works on a plantation. Imagine having hopes and dreams that you want come true because you want to grow up and you want to be a school teacher. But you ain't got an education because you can't go to school. That's the reality for my little sister. So if it means I gotta go to England and make something of myself, I can do it for she.
She has so many many children, she didn't know what to do. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do.
Everywhere I go, it just seems like more of them are appearing. All I see are
chimneys with smoke. That must mean that there's opportunities at factories close by. I'll never forget
how uncomfortable I felt when that black family moved in next door. I feared for the lives of my family. I just felt so
cold. How ever did people live in such a climate? First thing on my to-do list was buy an overcoat. But I just couldn't contain
my dismay. And every time I have to go close to one of those black... Now, you see, I have no problem with the color of their skin. It's just they bathe in pungent oils. I just
had to further my studies as a nurse so I could send back to my mom. You see, she's depending on me to make it here. So I just had to do what I needed to do. I just keep trying.
To tell my daughter that those black boys are no good for her. Our kind and their kind should never mix. But I still see the way that
they look at me like I'm a thing, not a person or a human being just like them. No blacks allowed. I've given up. What's the point?
She fed them some broth without any bread. She fed them some broth without any bread. She fed them some broth without any bread.
She fed them some broth without any bread.
Hi, good evening. I see that you have a vacant room here. Can I?
No!
Hi, good morning. I really need a place to sleep and you have an empty room. Can I?
No!
Please!
No!
Please!
No!
Please!
No!
Please!
No!
Yes. But you will have to be paying the same amount as if you were paying for the entire house. You will be sharing the space with about 40 other blacks, and there's not good maintenance, but I don't want to be hearing any complaints about that. That will do.
And whip them all solemnly and send them to bed. We live here all our lives so happy, tell us we have no rights. We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives so happy, tell us we have no rights. We live here all our lives so happy, tell us we have no rights.
And this concludes our coverage of the Windrush protest.
We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights? We live here all our lives so how can you tell us we have no rights?
You're muted, Alan.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought that was a great performance, and as has been said, you know, hopefully it will give you a feel for what the performance would have been like live in front of in front of an audience. Like I said, I can't see our participants, so I'm just wondering, Michelle, are you still around?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, that's great. So you gave us some comments on the play, and you know how it was conceived, and I think you can see the extent to which that the actors, you know, feel that they have an ownership of that play. But I couldn't help kind of wondering while I was watching that, do you have any plays up your sleeves that might be to do with Black Lives Matter or even about statues?
Not specifically about Black Lives Matter or statues, but I do have a Caribbean interpretation of Shakespeare's Tempest, which is also on YouTube. And I say interpretation, I should really call it a reimagining, because what I've done in that particular play is that I've looked at Tempest from the perspective of the islanders, not from the perspective of the colonizers. So Caliban and Ariel essentially they become more of the protagonists of the play than the antagonists, and they are the ones who are in control of what's happening in the play. Within that one, I have also rewritten some of the scenes and written in some new scenes. So if you know the play, it's portrayed as though at one point Caliban has sexually assaulted Miranda, and I've rewritten that so that it's not that story at all, but it's the story of what used to happen really on the islands, which is that you had relationships between the women, the white women and the black men, and oftentimes if they were caught, then they would cry rape. And of course, the black man would be penalized for that behavior. So I've rewritten it essentially from the perspective of Caliban and Ariel trying to get Prospero off the island to reclaim the island. And it comes back into that whole question of repatriation of the colonizers, but also reparations and reclaiming the land as being owned by ourselves. So that is one that deals with that. I have been doing, I suppose, more poetry recently in terms of the Black Lives Matter, because it's a heavy topic. It's a very heavy topic. And, you know, my father's also a playwright, and he always tells me, do not write plays in the heat of the moment. Let it simmer and then attach yourself to it after the fact. But, you know, sometimes if you are too emotionally attached to it and you write it in that moment, you know, I'm jotting down ideas, but I'm not writing the play just yet.
This is a really unfair question, but I mean, do you have a poem for us, Michelle?
I know why Kay is laughing. I do have one that I can read for you. Kay is laughing at me because she told me was it last week, Kay, that I need to read the poem?
Yes. And if you need a reference, it's in the WhatsApp chat between us. You can read it from there.
It would be honoured if you would. Kay, would you like to introduce the recital? No, you're muted.
Pull it up.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce my very dear friend and esteemed colleague, Miss Michelle Hinkson Cox, as she shares with us her poem, which speaks to Black Lives Matter.
I'm just waiting for it to load. Didn't quite work with the timing there, Kate. It decided to stick a little bit.
It's all building. You know, it's all part of the getting to the place where it happens.
Okay, here we go. Eyes dry, for I can no longer cry when I can no longer breathe. This air suffocates me. I can't inhale the polluted bullshit bureaucracy that seeks to muzzle years of oppression. 200 years post-emancipation, but we are still enslaved. Black mothers still suffer in solemn supplication as their Black children are stripped away one by one. One by one, our ancestors consoled the souls of our murdered Black sons, tormented Black daughters, grieving Black mothers and fathers, grandparents writhing in agony because of the oppression they fought against, still persists in 2020. We cannot breathe this air of white supremacy. We cannot passively perch on our proverbial porches as our Black brothers and sisters are erased vindictively. We cannot apathetically allow the poison of plantation politics to deny our people of the right to live fearlessly. We cannot breathe collectively. For centuries, broad Black backs have borne the burden of barbaric oppression, carefully calculated to build white wealth. They branded us like cattle while we ate the scraps that fell from their tables, pressed their knees down into our necks in a show of self-imposed superiority, choking us of our dignity, asserting their inhumanity. This isn't hypothetical, it's our reality. We will not breathe until we are heard instead of herded. We will not breathe until we can live without being hunted. We will not breathe until our protests dismantle the systems that have forced us to stop breathing. Eyes dry, and I will not cry until we can breathe. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And was that a premiere?
It was.
Fantastic. That was great. It was very moving, very powerful recital and words and delivery. Yeah, without sounding too silly, I do feel privileged and grateful that you were able to express that to us. That you expressed that to us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity once again.
It's all right, anytime. I mean, and if you need someone to come over and film the Tempest, you know, we won't.
It is actually up on YouTube.
Is it?
Yeah. So if you search for DE Tempest, it's not the Tempest, it's the Tempest.
Okay.
So it should come up somewhere near the top of that list. It's the only one that's got that name, The Tempest.
Now I have some entertainment to go with my rum punch.
Rum punch.
So that's good. So we'd scheduled this for an hour, and we've been at it for an hour and 20 minutes now. I think we probably should draw to a close, but I would really like to just open up one last time in case there was something wanted to express, and then close by, I think, we've got the actors all saying why it is they felt it was important to what the Windrush story was important to them. So I thought I could finish off just by playing that and then fade to black. I think it's only about 5 minutes or something. But prior to that, does anybody have any last comments that they would like to offer? No? Okay, so I need to take the share screen back again and just thank you very much, everybody, for coming along and participating in this. I think it's been a success, and I hope you all feel that it was worthwhile. And just to say that the Windrush events continue this afternoon. I think at 4 o'clock the Gold Rush radio station is on again. So okay, so come on. I don't want screen 2. I want. I'm sorry. Oh, I'll take it.
Hi, my name is Rashenda Hayward, and I go to the Barbados Community College. And the Windrush, this process has been very informative for me. I didn't know what the Windrush was before I started this process, and I'm very happy and grateful that I could bring awareness to other people as well, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people who didn't know about the Windrush. It's important to me because not only is it a case of bringing awareness, but it's a part of Barbadian history, and I think it's important for everyone to know it. And I know that the effects are still like trickling down from like generations of families. So like, I know there are families that have been separated and stuff. So I just think it's really important to know your past so that you can have a better future. I'm glad that it happened because now people are aware of the situation and it's not being like hidden anymore. So that's why it's important to me.
Hi, my name is Dylan Collimore. I'm 17 years old and I am involved in the Windrush piece put together by the BCC Theatre Arts students. This piece is important to me because I don't want to say directly affected, but my family is kind of involved in that Windrush era. My great-grandparents went down during the Windrush era, and you know that led to me and my other family members being born in England. So for me, it's more of a case where I'm thinking, wow, this is so unfair, because that could have been my grandparents, that could have been my mom, that could have been me being sent back to a place that they don't really call home when they call England their home instead.
Hi, my name is Raina Garns, and this piece is important to me because as a young person, I think that it's my job to create a following in social matters, whether it be international or national. And I believe that Windrush has impacted my country because it's known as Little England. So I want them to understand that it not only affects people in England, it also affects their family back here as well.
So my name is Tamina White and I'm from here in Barbados. And for me, the Windrush is important because it's a big part of our history and it's helped add to our culture. Not only being Bajan, but like the Caribbean in general. And I find that in general, a lot of our history and culture has been forgotten about or like only told from one side. And in doing this piece, I'm able to like educate a lot, because I didn't know about the Windrush before this piece, and I know a lot of people, when I told my parents that I'm doing it, they're like, oh, what's the Windrush? And same with my grandparents. So it's known, but it's not as known as it should be, because even though you're not like, it's not, the history isn't really, it shouldn't define you and you shouldn't like stick on it, but it's definitely important to like have a knowledge of.
Hi, my name is Ramarka Toy and I am from Barbados. I'm 17 years old. I think I forgot my own age. Why this is important to me. As a young person, we think the things of the past don't affect us currently. But seeing that the new issues with Windrush coming back up made me realize that it never really died, that it just resurfaced because of the new social media age and stuff like that. But these things actually happened to our forefathers, and it's still affecting us as young people all over the world. I might not be personally affected, but I know that some other young person out there is affected. And doing this piece is showing a message. I'm bringing this message to a wider audience. That's why this piece is important to me.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hunt and I go to the Barbados Community College. When we were introduced to this topic of the Windrush, it really hurt my feelings to know that people had to go through such inhumane treatment when they were just looking for a better way of living. It really touched me, and then when I was thinking about the time period and stuff, I realized that my grandparents would have went over on the Windrush. So then it became a personal topic and it came more personal to me. And when I was asking my father about it, because my grandparents are no longer around, he was telling me how he would see some of his friends were being treated, and it really hurt me to think that somebody that I looked up to, like my parents or my grandparents, was treated as nothing in somebody else's eyes. So something that I thought was so great was almost nothing to somebody else. And I wanted to explore that on stage and bring awareness through this Windrush piece with my class.
Okay, I'm Selena Williamson, and why this piece is so important to me is that like you don't hear about it very often in schools. Like I learned about it, but I was made known that in other schools it wasn't a priority to learn about it. And it's really important to see how it has suddenly like come up in like this year or the past recent years after it's like been around for like since the 70s, 60s and 50s. So it was just important for me to like make it known that this happened and that a lot of this can still happen in our future.
Hi, my name is Malaika Kearney. I'm 17 years old and I'm from the beautiful island of Barbados. Windrush has become really important to me because I really got to see the importance of it when it comes to Barbadian history. If it wasn't for Bajans and other Caribbean people being able to go to England, they wouldn't have had any job opportunities or being able to send money back to their families. So I think it's really important that we really talk about this topic more, and I'm glad that, you know, I have this platform to perform with my class and really bring awareness to the topic because it's such a big part of history, Bajan history and also English history. So I hope that this topic continues to grow and more people get to understand the importance of Windrush.
Hello, my name is Brianna Gibbs. I am from Barbados and I go to school at the Barbados Community College studying theatre arts. The Windrush is important to me, not necessarily because I have any family members or friends who went through this process, but because as a Black person, I empathize with other Black people who are going through this really tough time, being ripped apart from the place they've always known.
My name is Danielle Sanson. I'm 17. This piece and the Windrush itself, it doesn't affect me directly, but I think in retrospect, because in the Caribbean, a lot of us, especially when you are in certain professions like acting and music and dance and law, you tend to have to travel if you want to find work. And for me, I know personally that I'm gonna have to end up traveling sooner or later. So if things like this can happen to people who've lived there for the better part of their lives, and what's to say that a person who just went there and is just trying to get along, what's to say something similar can't happen to me? So I feel like it's something that we need to talk about and we need to make pieces of it because it's an issue.
I hope that came out all right. I think what we will do, if it's okay with everybody, is we'll put together a version of this with the direct video in the appropriate places, so that we get the best quality that we can, and then circulate that with you. And as soon as possible, we'll get the recording we have of you, Michelle, to you as well, so that you can use that any way that you want to do. And thanks a lot to XpoNorth for hosting this. It's been great. There is a green room if anybody wants to go to the green room for
yeah, we can head back in there if anybody wants to go and debrief.
But if not, thank you very much for coming along, and I hope that this is one of many future collaborations.